Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Bonkowski here. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to do a brief traffic network analysis on the city of Honolulu and the southern Oahu. You can see in the map right there in front of you that it largely concerns this area that's highlighted in red. But it's mainly a 20 to 22 mile corridor that extends along the entire south shore of Oahu. That's really the most affected by traffic congestion on this island. So Honolulu is the largest portion, but really we wouldn't be doing the discussion justice if we didn't talk about the entire south shore, because that's really where the problem lies. The scope is larger than the city of Honolulu. It extends all the way out here to Kapolei, and then as far west as Hawaii Kai. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about some short-term, long-term, and enduring solutions. Just a couple of facts right there. It kind of bounces back and forth between Los Angeles, Honolulu does, as far as the average hours of idle traffic time per year. Right now for 2014, I believe last year's analysis put us at 64 hours of idle traffic time for the year 2014. And when I say 64 hours, I mean actual time that you're stopped in traffic per year, on average, per vehicle or per household. Okay, and then another important fact is that drive times in Honolulu are 88% longer during rush hours, which are pretty standard here. They start around 07 and they go until about 9:30 or 10, and then they pick back up again around 3 p.m. and then extend all the way to 7. So during those times, they're 88% longer. So we actually passed Los Angeles in many categories. So that's why we kind of go back and forth between LA as far as traffic stagnation and traffic congestion overall. Let me go ahead and put some references up front. These are some of the references that I used. I actually had some people telling me last week that they'd like to see the links and the references up front, so here you go. The big one was the U.S. Department of Transportation, their research branch, and then, of course, we're going to talk about the Elevated Rail Project here in Honolulu and the South Shore, which takes us all the way up through 2019. That's that second one there. And then the third one here, real interesting, is the City of Vancouver website, and what they've done is they've created a YouTube video. It's a few years old, but it outlines their transportation initiative 2040, and that's a very value-added commentary as far as what we're talking about today. So take a look at the video. Go ahead and skip ahead to about a minute into the video. It's a 4-minute video, and it talks about some specific issues that I think Honolulu could benefit from if they looked at that. So let's go ahead and get started. We've already talked about the actual, to get you spatial orientation as far as on the ground where the traffic congestion lies. You can see right there a pretty good picture of right there the bottleneck that exists as you get into close to Vineyard. You start getting into the downtown area. Let's go ahead and do a deeper dive. For the deeper dive, you can see Honolulu. The top 5 bottlenecks in Honolulu are approaching downtown in the Middle Street merge, which I think is actually number 3 here, and that's right there by the airport. But number 1 is actually Honolulu Freeway East, and these are average speeds right here. 8 miles an hour all the way up as low as 7.3 miles per hour at the Funston Road exit, which is number 5 right here. Okay, so those are the, and you can see that they're all within a like a 5 or 6 mile radius. So 3 major traffic conduits within this short radius here. And an important thing to look at is you've got the Middle Street merge here. You got a major bottleneck right there, and then you've got you got the Likelike and the Pali Highway coming from the windward side of Oahu that also kind of intercept the H1, all in the same area right here. So you've got a 4 or 5 mile square radius right here, and a lot of merges, major merges. So, urban planning and stuff, that's probably something that needed to be looked at. Of course, one of the big things in the defense of the urban planners back in the 70s, probably even the 60s here for Honolulu, is that I don't think they accommodated for the massive population explosion that Honolulu has endured over the last decade. But this is just a snapshot of the top 5. And of course, there's 10 or 15 major bottlenecks throughout the South Shore, but I wanted to highlight the top 5. And then you can see also along H1 and 201, highlighted in red are the real trouble or the problematic areas in general along the entire freeway. This was an interesting slide that I pulled off of the U.S. Department of Transportation, and it shows miles of main roadway per 1,000 persons, and Honolulu is at the very bottom. Of course, a major factor for that is that we are on an island, so we don't have anywhere to go. But we can't build, or the Honolulu Department of Transportation cannot build bypasses. They don't have the land or the alternatives that many large cities that have got the space and got the geography to flex with. We just don't have it. But it is interesting that we're dead last there. If we take a look at the dilemma and dissect it, we look at, I already talked about the poor urban planning brings 3 major freeway conduits to the busiest section of the largest highway at the entrance to the most populous part of the city. And so it's the confluence of, or the perfect storm of all these things happening in one 4-mile square radius. And then I touched on it on the second slide there, the lane deficient island, we have no place to expand to. So it's not like we can go, we've got the ocean on one side and we've got mountains north. So there's no place to expand to. So we're locked in, we're landlocked. Even though it sounds crazy that we're on an island, but we are. So it's going to be difficult to explore bypass options in the congested Honolulu metropolitan area. And I also talked about Honolulu's urban population growth has exceeded early urban planning estimates. That's no secret. And the Hawaii Department of Transportation local government expenditures are among the lowest in the nation. I do have a graphic for that as a backup slide. I can show it later. But I thought that was interesting. I think that the High Dot needs to take a look at that, and let's go ahead and take some of this money from tourism and put it back into the transportation infrastructure. And they are doing that with the Elevated Rail. They're already doing it. There's a program in place for that, which is managed by HART, and we'll talk about HART in a second. But I think that probably more can be done. Is there any good news? Yeah, our culture is actually not that bad as far as transit ridership. We have one of the highest in the nation. People take mass transit. They ride the bus. A lot of people ride the bus here. Carpooling is actually not bad also. 15% of all commuters do carpool already. We can probably do a little bit more, and we're going to touch on that as well later. But, it doesn't take a lot of analysis to determine that traffic congestion is an enduring problem on Honolulu and a concern for all residents. So next we're going to talk about the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. And it's a great step towards the modernization of Honolulu and Oahu's dated transportation infrastructure. So let's go ahead and get into that. This is the HART and the Elevated Rail. It started a few years ago in 2010 with the establishment of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation. And they are largely the managing body of the city's major rail project. It's currently underway. I believe it's on schedule. The first actual completion or major benchmark is in 2017 when the rail, it's kind of hard to see right there, started here, okay, when it gets to the Honolulu airport, that's going to be one of the major benchmarks, and that's going to happen in 2017. Its ultimate goal will take the rail to Ala Moana Center in 2019, which is down here, and that is going to be extremely helpful by alleviating major congestion in Honolulu and taking as many as 40,000 vehicles from the road. So that's a significant impact. What is interesting also, though, is that those 5 bottlenecks that I described earlier are in this area right here. So if we're here by 2017, then these bottlenecks are going to be completely unaffected. So what are we doing in the meantime? 2019, we're not going to be here until 2019. So what are we doing in the 4 years leading up to this? And that's what we're going to talk about as well. But back to the heart and the elevated rail. It's an elevated rail that will connect the outlying communities of Kapolei out here in Ewa Beach to the city and to the airport and then back. And it's going to put like 27 cars on the tracks, and it's going to be elevated so it will not impede ground traffic, which is a key factor, which I touch on here. Will not interfere with ground traffic. 70% of Oahu's population growth will occur along the 20-mile southern transit corridor that I described in the first slide. The elevated rail does cover the vast majority of the southern transit corridor. So you can see in the picture here, this graphic off of the HART website, that it's going to, it's going to link up the buses and the rail together will form a large mass transit infrastructure. Okay, so like I said earlier, what about now? What about 2015 to 2019? There's no interim solution. The rail will only be partially complete by 2017. I kind of got ahead of myself a couple times. That's okay. So how do we alleviate traffic congestion now? The population is growing daily. I wrote down some brainstorming interim solutions, and this is just spitballing, but city-sponsored carpool initiative, I thought that might be a way ahead to kind of, even though our carpooling is good, what can we do to sponsor it? What can we do at the municipal and county level to further incentivize carpooling? Augmenting the city bus fleet, soliciting tour companies in contract. Kind of in retrospect, I don't think that's a good idea because now we're pulling from tourism. We don't want to do that. We don't want to, because tourism is one of our funding streams for the HART, for the elevated rail projects. We don't want to do that. I doubt that they'd be very complicit anyways. But augmenting the city bus fleet in the meantime is probably a COA that needs to be explored. Citywide bike lanes, incentivize bicycling. And we're going to take a look at Vancouver later on and talk about what Vancouver's doing. Limit vehicle registration. So, this idea was just really from left field, but, one vehicle per family per calendar year. So, if you've got, but I just don't think that's going to work out. I think we would get too much pushback, and I don't think we would get buy-in from the Senate or from the state legislature on that. It's going to be a tough one to sell. But, we're brainstorming here. Let's look at some more ideas. Freeway entrance traffic light regulation, like California. I don't know if you've driven in California, but, you don't get on the freeway unless you stop, and it's completely regulated based on traffic flow. And there's some type of algorithm that allows what traffic goes on the freeway, what gets on the 405 or the San Diego freeway. You don't just drive on the freeway, and there's no regulation here. So I think that's probably worth looking at. That's maybe more of a midterm or a mid-project solution because there's going to be some infrastructure that needs to be in place there. Large-scale carpool lane enforcement. We've got carpool lanes on this island. I know it, and everybody else knows it. It's a joke, okay? It's not enforced. If we enforce the carpool lanes like they do in California, it's like a $435 fine or something absurd. If you get stopped, and you have violated the carpool lane, you're going to get fined the $435, and there's no talking your way out of the ticket. You will pay $435. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. So that's quite an incentive to obey the law. So I think we need to probably take a look at that. Prohibit construction from 05 to 1900. I think that's pretty common sense, but I still see construction crews out during the day, limiting traffic. So why? Why are we doing this? Let's take a look at that and let's get that in place. I think that's an easy fix. And then we already talked about carpools, but incentivize companies, maybe private companies. Like a big company here on this island is Kaiser Permanente Healthcare Solutions. The state or the city goes to the company and says, look, we'd like to incentivize that you sponsor our carpool. Maybe you guys have got some vans. Maybe we can look at some tax breaks. I don't know. I'm not a legislator. I'm not an urban planner, but I think that there's some things we can look at here to probably incentivize company-run carpools Maybe the company can send out vans to pick people up. I don't know if these are options. I don't know if this is something that companies, that are vested here, that are headquartered in Honolulu, that have a vested interest in the transportation infrastructure and the success of the city, would want to look at. I would think they would. But let's solicit these companies to get on board with carpooling. More broad spectrum carpooling initiatives, and then encourage the 410 work schedule. I don't know if that would help. Once again, it's just another brainstorming idea. But eliminate Aloha Friday, so people are working Sunday through Wednesday, or Monday through Thursday, and then it frees up Thursday, it frees up Friday. So the back end of the week is a lot lighter traffic wise. Or there's a way to do it, where we've got different industries working different days. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of analysis that needs to get done. I'm sketching some broad strokes with this presentation, but there's a lot more that can be done. Okay, so if we take a look at the solutions, we look at long term. Kind of got a timeline here. This is where we're at now, of course. This is where we're going to be, but there's nothing being done between here and here, other than the Elevated Rail Project that the Heart is conducting. Traffic reduction and congestion are things that need to be looked at, and I think that if we incentivize some carpool incentives, bike lanes, we look at some cost-effective measures to implement for traffic flow, entrance regulation, we start to change the culture in Honolulu. We start to be proactive with these problems instead of just establishing a long-term solution. And I know 4 years isn't that long, but I think we need to look in a couple different areas, and that covers immediate solutions. From 2015 to 2016, what are we doing? What's happening this year? What is going to be implemented this year? Okay, before December 31st, 2015, what are we implementing? What are we doing? And then some mid-project solutions. Okay, so between 2016 and after the rail is complete to Honolulu International Airport, what are we doing? That's where we start getting to some of the more infrastructure changes, where we start regulating traffic a little bit more. There's a lot that can be done. And you can kind of see my color-coded timeline bar down here for the actual rail project. This is the rail project as we go through the years. We start out red, and then we start to get start to move into green, and then in 2017, that's when the elevated rail reaches Honolulu International Airport, so that'll free up a lot of the congestion out west. Doesn't do a lot for Honolulu, but it will help with the west. And then ultimately, when we get to 2019, we will have vastly improved urban mobility for all Honolulu citizens and Southern Oahu citizens. So Waikele and Ewa Beach, and everybody coming from the far west, and traffic reduction. So I think the takeaway is that no one interim solution is going to solve our immediate concerns and reduce congestion. But if we take an integrated approach and look at implementing all or many, with a risk reduction strategy, as long as we get legislature approval, then we can watch transformation happen, and it's going to happen quickly. Other cities have done it, and I think we need to probably get into it too. But like I said, broad strokes here. Just some things that I'm thinking about when I do a cursory analysis of the traffic situation in Honolulu. So much more can be done, and I just don't know if we're utilizing all available resources to try to come up with some immediate and mid-project solutions, and then even enduring beyond 2019. Okay, so beyond 2019, what are we going to do? Let's go ahead and talk about that now. So that's where I get into that for my final commentary. I'm not going to read the top, but most people understand that transformation is a process, but people also want results. So by implementing some immediate solutions, we can begin the transformation now, as no one solution will fix our broken commuter dilemma. So even projects like the Hearts Rail are not going to be enough in the long term. What are we doing 10 years from now, 20 years from now, so 30 years from now? Other cities have done that. And it's interesting that the U.S. Department of Transportation just launched their 30-year plan through 2045. So I think we can probably go ahead and follow their lead and begin a 30-year transformation initiative to completely revitalize the transportation infrastructure in Hawaii. So this last part here, I went into the City of Vancouver website and looked around, and they've got some great initiatives, and they've done a lot with their city as far as their transportation infrastructure. But if urban planners can look beyond our borders for live urban planning templates, such as Vancouver, Canada, some long-term solutions can be drafted. So when I talk of long-term, I'm not talking about 2019. I'm talking about 10, 20, 30 years. And they're already doing that in Canada. So their urban planners there have taken huge steps to reinvent the way their people get around. They've significantly reduced emissions over the past 15 years and have built compact communities closer to their activity areas in the cities, while making all roads bicycle and pedestrian friendly. An interesting fact, Vancouver has less cars today than it did 15 years ago, despite the population increase. So they have a larger population, yet they have less cars on the road. How is that even possible? Well, I think if you go to their website and go to their YouTube video, if you're impatient, go ahead to 110 and check it out. But bottom line is, I think it may be time for the City of Honolulu and the Hawaii Department of Transportation to follow the U.S. Department of Transportation's lead and begin its 30-year transformation initiative. Once again, folks, broad strokes here, but please come online and let me know what you think, especially if you're a Honolulu resident. I know it's kind of a third rail issue, no pun intended, but I think these are things that need to be looking at, and we have not been looking at. We've got some very bright people here in the city, but we tend to live in a bubble here. We don't care what's happening on the mainland. Well, I think we need to get out of that mentality and kind of reach out and look at what other cities are doing and implement some solutions that are short-term, mid-term, and beyond the long-term, but enduring over the next 3 decades. These are my references. Thanks for watching, and come online with comments. In a couple days, I'll post the final draft or the final presentation for the Honolulu Harbor Expansion Project. Thanks for watching.